Hey, what is up, mortals? Welcome to part 1 season 2 of What If Toga Was a Hero. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. His gaze never wavered. It was filled with an unnerving level of passion. His eyelids gently caressed the edges of his eyes. The light hit them ever so perfectly that allowed his eyes to almost twinkle to an unnatural degree. For what felt like ages, his eyes had never faltered. His determination to watch over her was totally creepy. Will you knock that off? Toga shouted with a shrill tone, her finger aimed right at Yuga Aoyama. You're so not going to scare me into giving up just by staring me down. The class awkwardly stared at the two. Ever since it was announced that the two would go against each other, the young woman had seen the boy just staring at her. At this point, the two had to go to their preparation rooms now that the first 3 fights had ended. The 4th battle between Ida and Mei had only just begun. Toga had been able to mostly ignore it up till now. The distraction of Izuku's brilliant, strong-willed victory against Hitoshi had been a major help towards that. The whole thing had gotten her psyched and worked up, in much of a similar way it had when she saw his finger back on their first day. This time he even broke 2 fingers. She and Uraraka talked about the fight while the second fight went on. Toga had only gotten further worked up throughout the talk. To calm herself down, she stepped out during the 3rd fight just in time to see Izuku return to the room. The boy even asked if she was okay when she left, and never got upset when she didn't outright reply to him. She felt bad for just leaving like that. Sadly, being around him wouldn't do much to assist in her calming down. When she did come back and blamed the whole thing on her nervousness. Perusal, the two had only focused on trying to make her feel better, all of which had helped her stay distracted from the set of eyes on her the whole time. She always saw them, but never needed to think too much about it until now. Yuga stood up with a smile that could charm the world. His hand gently motioned to her, while the other hand's fingertips gently rested upon the center of his chest. The lights behind him once again caught his body just right. It illuminated his movements as if he himself were directing it to better show himself off. It was quite like he was an actor on stage. Each movement had to be a performance that dazzled anyone and everyone who saw it. Why would I ever wish for you to quit? I wish only to share your gaze as we prepare our burning passion towards our performance for the world. He spoke with such passion that if this was all an act after all to keep her thrown off, he was the best actor she had ever met. The shouts of Ida slowly trailed into the silence the two had created in the room. Soon followed Mei as she shouted in order to advertise her baby to the audience. The class slowly looked towards the TV. Before them the class saw Ida, who flew wildly through the air. Toga glanced over for a moment. She could feel a bead of awkward sweat roll down the back of her head. Whatever you say, she said while she redirected her eyes back to Yuga, who never looked away from her. Toga sighed at the smile that beamed at her face as it softened. She mostly didn't want to be yelled at for tardiness. They were already late for going to the preparation room. And she could no longer hold a straight face due to the sideshow she could easily see from the corner of her eye. After wishes of good luck were exchanged, the two set off. Some time later, Ida was announced the winner after the prolonged infomercial had finished. Toga and Yuga made their way to the area. Toga, though, could feel the weight of the world finally hit her. Hundreds of eyes trained on just her and Aoyama, along with countless more that watched from their homes. If she proved herself here, there was no way her father could pretend she hadn't made progress. Toga was grateful that she was up against her classmate rather than someone from Class B. She would need the edge of the knowledge she had on his quirk. It would make up for how little she could use hers in real combative ways. Aoyama could shoot a laser from his belly for 1 second at a time at a rate similar to that of someone who could throw quick punches. She could keep up with such a rate thanks to all her training. In order to win, she would need to get in close in order to knock him out. When the start of the match was declared, Toga began to move. She kept on her toes and attempted to stay on the move as she had been taught to do. Meanwhile, Yuga did his best not to let up with his lasers. The match was fast-paced with Toga heavily on the defensive. Toga eyed his belt as she moved. It was his own support item, which likely meant he'd be hindered significantly if it didn't work. She needed to bust it. Her fists alone may not quite work on their own. The girl's lips curled into a wide grin as a plan came to mind. Toga leapt and landed in a low crouch to the ground. She made sure to linger for a moment before she leapt once again. She barely got out of the line of fire in time. The laser barely missed the area and hit the grass just beyond it. She had to get closer, she needed to get lower. It was risky, but with the power it hit the grass, she knew it would work for what she had planned. Toga leapt forward to dodge another laser. She landed on her stomach and let herself slide closer with the momentum. Most assumed she had tripped and fell from exhaustion. Even Yuga assumed so. The boy shot another laser at her, but missed again when she rolled to the side of it in the nick of time. It crashed into the arena ground with a loud boom. Perfect, Toga whispered to herself happily. The moment the dust cleared, Yuga's smile finally wavered in his brows and cheeks. Sight before him of the girl missing startled him. His eyes searched the rubble that still littered the ground. Before he could look any longer, his eyes met Toga's the moment she reappeared before him with a gasp. The girl smiled as she slammed a large hunk of the arena into the center of the belt as hard as she could. The action busted it, as well as caused Yuga to stumble backwards, his face filled now with shock and surprise. Toga had hoped to merely hinder the boy in the battle, though as she saw the opportunity before her she knew she had to take it. Toga kicked him square in the stomach to cause Yuga to tumble back and out of the ring. The announcer declared her victorious. Toga jumped for joy with a bright smile. Her mother back at home did the same. Even her father watched on in amazement. A small smile began to show openly on his face. It though retreated quickly the moment his wife looked at him. Her father offered a casual shrug to hide the mild pride he had grown inside for his daughter. Back at the tournament, Toga looked to Yuga. He looked like he was upset with his loss but tried his best to still stay positive. Toga allowed herself to slowly begin to smile when she realized he really did have the best intentions in mind all along. Hey, Toga offered him a hand. You were amazing, Yuga. Sorry about your belt. Yuga looked up to her. The sparkle returned back to his eyes. Toga felt another sweat drop go down the back of her head from the look. She gripped his hand when he reached up and pulled him back up to the arena. The two enjoyed the cheers for a moment longer before they were shooed off the platform. On the way back to the main room with the other students, the two wished Yaoyorozu and Takoyami luck on their match. The other two congratulated them in return on their way out. Upon the return, Toga saw Bakugo roll his eyes at her. She stuck her tongue at him in return. Uraraka hugged Toga. The girls bounced with excitement as they did so. When they parted, Izuku spoke up with his own congratulations paired with a thumbs up. Toga blushed bashfully at the notion, not noticing her best friend as she was eyed by her. Uraraka didn't say anything for now to not ruin the moment. Instead, she wished Kirishima luck as he left for the preparation room. The class watched the next two fights excitedly. Izuku and Toga tried to ease Uraraka's nerves she held for her fight that was coming up. Uraraka and Bakugo's fight commenced much like it had originally in the show. Toga found it harder the longer it went on to not let her inner rage out. The sight of how badly Bakugo was hurting Uraraka in their fight was truly testing her composure. At the sight, Izuku gently touched her shoulder. Hey, he's not doing it to hurt her. Bakugo's going all out because to him it would be disrespectful to her if he didn't try his hardest like she is. His words were soft and his voice soothed Toga to a more composed state. Toga was still filled with rage, but a lesser, more controllable one now. Thanks, she said quietly in return. Izuku gave her a nod. When the fight was over, she left to check in on Uraraka, who was likely with Recovery Girl at that point. On her way over, she felt something that truly disturbed her. Something that truly bled off an aura of malice, and something that aimed to pounce and attack at any moment. It lurked closely behind her as it awaited a proper opportunity to strike. Toga whipped around to see no one behind her. She blinked confused, though slowly looked down upon the moment she heard its voice. A voice she barely could remember, but was familiar enough to her. The voiced word held itself out like a note in a song of a siren luring in its prey. Her brow twitched upon the sight that came to view. It was a figure of a short boy she could barely remember ever interacting with. He was certainly in their class. He hadn't gotten far in the tournament thus far. Honestly, she could barely even remember seeing him in class at all so far. Her thoughts on how he even got back here were pushed aside for a moment. The boy she knew as Minta waggled his small brows at her. So I saw your fight earlier. A sly grin crept onto his face. And I gotta say, you're pretty dexterous. The bottom lids of her eyes curled up along with her bottom lip. The boy breathed quite heavily while he shared his thoughts on her movement very openly. Never before had she felt more uncomfortable than right now. How could she have overlooked this boy so easily up until now? His presence was so hard to miss. The boy was nowhere near shy, so she doubted it was due to him avoiding her or something. Hey, the voice of Mina called out in anger. The teachers told you that you couldn't be back here, you creep. Before Toga could take much more, and the two darted past her in a full-blown chase. Toga could feel her upper lip twitch while she squinted into the distance. She hoped to avoid that boy from now until the rest of time, though she knew his smile would haunt her dreams for the rest of her current and next life. The young girl proceeded to tunnel vision her path right to the infirmary to meet with Uraraka. She even missed Shoto and Izuku as they left to go to an alley to talk. Uraraka bowed on her way out to thank the nurse for her help. She saw Toga and smiled sadly. Toga quickly moved to embrace her best friend. The two talked over Uraraka's match for a bit while they walked. It would be a while until Toga's next match, so the girls decided to find somewhere to chill out alone to talk before Izuku's match. It was a friendly and fun talk that perked their spirits up. Toga noticed Uraraka's face that grew a bit hesitant. What's wrong? Toga asked with a concerned tone. Uraraka paused and bit her bottom lip. Do you like Izuku? Toga could feel the warmth leave her face at the question. She knew her answer would end up hurting Uraraka, who also clearly liked Izuku. She didn't want to lie to her friend either. With a sharp breath inwards, Toga forced out her answer. There's just something about him that she stopped herself before she could say something that would only make the situation worse. I do like him, but I'd never act on it. The words first saddened Uraraka due to the news they both shared a love interest in the boy. It then proceeded to shock her at the fact that Toga did not wish to date the boy. Why not? She inquired. Cause I know you like him too. I'd never hurt you like that over a boy. There are plenty of other people I could try to date instead of someone you like, Toga offered with a soft tone. Like Bakugo? Uraraka asked with a teary-eyed soft smile that formed on her face. You know, Toga protested and stuck her tongue out. He is way too obnoxious. That and we have nothing in common. Besides, he totally would never go for me. Toga protested with a blush that quickly formed on her face. Uraraka started to giggle at her reply. She flailed her arms at her friend while Uraraka chose to tease her more about the idea. Toga knew she and him had gotten a bit more friendly, but it wasn't romantic. At least not in her eyes. After a while the two calmed down from their teasing. Uraraka gently took Toga's hand in hers and smiled softly to her. The smile gifted the warmth back to Toga that she previously lost, and then some further after that. I won't date Izuku either. I don't want to hurt you. Just like you said, our friendship is far more important than a boy. Toga blinked in surprise, but smiled at Uraraka right after the shock passed. She didn't like the idea that her friend had to push off her feelings just for her. The jealousy of even the idea alone of her dating Izuku only proved the point that neither should date him. Toga gently pulled Uraraka in for a hug, who happily accepted the hug. Toga was honestly relieved beyond belief that her feelings about Izuku hadn't caused any issues between them. Uraraka was one of the most important people in her life after all. Thanks, Uraraka, Toga said softly while she held Uraraka close. The two soon after made their way back toward the main room where the others sat and waited. It seemed oddly quiet. Toga was about to ask what was going on, but saw the screen they all stared at. Izuku shouted an inspirational speech to Shoto, who looked unharmed. Izuku, on the other hand, had broken. His fingers somehow looked even further broken than before. Toga's breathing grew heavy. Her heart rate spiked, and grew only faster with each moment passed. Toga could barely think straight. She rushed out of the room quickly while the others were distracted. All but Bakugo seemed to not notice her flee. The boy said nothing, and decided to just eye her in silence as she left. Toga closed the door quickly. She pressed her back to it as if she'd fall if it wasn't there. A young girl held herself tightly. Her face was flushed red. A wild, insane-looking smile spread over her face. Everything inside her screamed to further injure Izuku in order to make him cuter. I need to break him, he's just too cute, she whispered out. Her smile grew only more haunting. Her lips parted to form an open-mouthed smile that showed off her sharp teeth. Her legs trembled as they slowly shifted directions to permit her to face in the direction she'd need to go to get to the infirmary. She knew after the fight he would be sent there. All she would need to do is wait. Her feet felt heavy. Each step betrayed her. Her body moved on its own. Her breath turned heavier with a pant. The very air felt as though it desired to suffocate her. All her senses attacked her in a vicious war to see which one would be allowed to break her first. The words of her mother from when she was a child sliced through her internal chanting. It silenced the words that told her to hurt one of her friends. The words were then of the day her mother told her about what she did to the small bird, which had been wrong. This was no doubt even worse, to do what everything inside her begged to do. The words posed as the only force that fought against her inner desires. She had to be good for her mother's sake. She needed to be good to prove her father wrong, that she was better than what he saw her as. With every ounce of willpower and strength in her body she slowed her walking to a stop. The desire to press on grew wild inside her. Her body felt as though it would tear itself apart if she didn't keep moving, like it had decided to hold itself for a ransom. A gentle touch on her shoulder pulled her attention over to Uraraka. Toga's vision had grown blurry from the stress. The center of her vision only cleared enough to see her best friend's scared look. Not of her, but for her. Toga had been so lost in her own head that she hadn't even heard her approach. Hey, you don't look so good. Do you need to go to recovery, girl? Uraraka asked gently, then felt Toga's forehead. Well, you're burning up. No, I don't need to go there, Toga said, more to the voice deep inside her that wished to hurt Izuku than to her concerned friend. The look Uraraka gave her screamed how she didn't believe Toga. Uraraka chose to respect Toga's wishes though. Instead she decided to stay with her and talk. The action, unknowingly to Uraraka, helped Toga down from the edge she had danced on only moments before. When the time came that she was called to the prepping room, Uraraka made sure Toga was still good. Toga once again said she didn't need to go to recovery, girl. Uraraka gave her one last hug and left her to go to check on Izuku. Toga leaving for the preparation room. Toga slowly made her way with a far more clear mind than before to the designated room. There she waited until it was time for her battle, and made her way to the arena. She locked eyes with Fumigage, her next opponent. She didn't know a lot about his quirk, but she knew enough. She proceeded to look up to the sky. She squinted at the sun that was directly overhead. In a darker area she'd be screwed against his dark shadow. Though in direct sunlight like they were now, she actually had a chance. From what she had heard for Mizuku, the boy's shadow grew smaller with light. This meant she could get closer far easier than with Yuga. It was far more dangerous too, but with her practice she had used her invisibility, she may be able to get an edge. When the start of the match started up, both of the students darted forward towards each other. Dark Shadow emerged, aimed to strike. Fumikage grit his teeth as Dark Shadow missed upon Toga, disappearing right as the attack launched. She appeared beside him to send a fist towards him. Fumikage took the hit and sent Dark Shadow to her new location. Unfortunately for him, she vanished once again. Toga proceeded to use her invisibility in short bursts to avoid getting lightheaded from holding her breath for too long. She did her best to lure Dark Shadow from Fumicage's side by dipping in and out of his range, which forced it to move further away with each attack. To avoid him withdrawing completely due to repeated failures to land a blow, she occasionally allowed some attacks to hit her. Each time she got an opening, she darted in to get in blows. Each blow slowly pushed Fumikage towards the edge of the arena, while he was more focused on trying to hit Toga than noting where he currently stood until it was too late. It was another ring-out win. Yes, but with her powers it was hard to go up against people like Fumikage in a long drawn-out close-up battle. When the last opening became available, she struck hard, knocking him out of the arena to gain her victory. Toga basked in the cheering of the crowd with a bright smile while she caught her breath. She then looked to the nearest camera to shout at it and waved excitedly. "I'm doing it, Mom," she declared, jumping up and down. "I know, baby, I'm so proud," her mother shouted in return at the TV. From home, "She can't hear you from the TV, dear," her father grumbled while he held in his pride that only grew stronger. Back at the tournament, Toga once again helped her opponent to his feet. She thanked him for the match and made her way back to the room with the others. She and the others relaxed while they all watched Bakugo's fight against Kirishima, who had won the tiebreaker from his draw with Tetsu. This battle, though, ended in a loss against Bakugo. Next was Shoto, an Ida that would prove Shoto as the winner later once again, as it had in canon. While the fight went on, Toga and Bakugo had to make their way to the preparation rooms when instructed. A few moments into their silent walk, Bakugo looked to her and spoke up. "Make me look bad again, and I'll kill you, freak," he warned. "Only you could do that, Bakugo. No one else would need to," Toga said teasingly. "Besides, you're not the only one who wants to avoid looking bad." Bakugo huffed at her teasing. He eyed her for a moment before he left with a grunt to his own room. Some time later, Toga and Bakugo made their way onto the arena. The very air around them grew thick with anticipation of who would win the fight. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in the story thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes deep into the facts and lore of a wide variety of anime. It's sure to expand your weeb knowledge for all kinds of series, guaranteed. On top of that, we have a third channel called We The Celestials Naruto What Ifs. It's what we do on this channel already, but in the vast world and lore of Naruto. Go check it out if you're in the mood for some jutsu action. Secondly, on behalf of We The Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We The Celestials, then I would like to extend out an invitation to join the team. The only caveat being we only accept members 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. Our Discord is an all-around fantastic place to be, whether you're a fan or looking to join our band of misfits. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So, thank you all for watching, and have a great day.